Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. For this week, I use story maps for my reading strategy. It's found on page 59 of the Go-To Strategies book. I actually used two different story maps. I used one traditional and one that was a little more advanced for two of my guided reading groups. A traditional story map just includes character setting, problem resolution, and conclusion. I used this story map with one of my lower reading groups. The students could easily complete the character, the problem, and the setting. Resolution and conclusion were a little more difficult for them to complete. They needed a little more guidance with the understanding about the difference between the two topics. In some lower level books, the resolution and conclusion are kind of the same thing, so I understand why they were a little bit confused. The student with the most confusion gets pulled out for tutoring during my read aloud, so he misses those little mini lessons I do with the read aloud, like resolution and conclusion, so I wasn't really surprised when he couldn't complete this task without some struggles. The other group is a more advanced guided reading group, so their story map included exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. It's a lovely copy of the story map. At first, when I introduced it, their panic set in. There were big words like exposition and rising action. Once we explained what exposition was, what rising action was in a little mini lesson, the boys in the group easily completed the exposition part. And in fact, they said it was really easy. They were just worried because they hadn't heard the word before. Rising action created a little more of a debate because they argued about what the big events were. So we problem solved that by flipping the paper over, and the boys listed all the events that had happened so far. They began arguing over, like, if this had happened, then this wouldn't have happened. And they argued over the what ifs of the book, which was a really great thing for them to do because it got them thinking about what was important and what wasn't important. So to solve the problem, before they filled in the rising action portion, they created a list on the back of all the big events that happened so far. And then we starred the ones that we thought were important so far. And we're going to keep this list going until we get to the climax of the story. And then from that, they're going to choose the 6 biggest events and put it on there. Positives for this was that story maps can be tailored to meet different groups. The story maps were a quick way for the students to get to the meat of the story. And the negatives, I really didn't have any negatives. As long as you can think on your feet when problems arise, the negatives were minimal. There was really no issue. I had to do a couple little extra mini lessons in there, but that was not a big deal. Changes for next time, I think I'm going to continue to have the students make the list on the back of the paper for rising action because I think it was a good way for them to sort out what happened in the story. And I do want to create a story map that falls between the basic one and the more advanced one to introduce some of those topics along the way. For the writing portion of the assignment, I used report frames. My students were about to start a report on colonies, and they were going to create a PowerPoint presentation, so it fit right into what we were doing. The task that the students are doing involves them researching a colony, collecting information, and using the information to persuade other students to come to their colony. It encompasses fluency, integrated literacy, persuasive writing technology, and to help students gather the data, I used report frames. Students were given a simple organizer with the topics that they needed to find, and they were given space on the document so that they could write information. And they're going to create from this information a script and a PowerPoint presentation. The script's going to be in complete sentences, but the PowerPoint does not have to be in complete sentences. The positives about this, students were working with a partner. They used a lot of collaboration. There was a lot of talking going on. The report frames provided just enough structure to keep their writing focused, but allowed them to go above and beyond and allowed them to use whatever techniques they needed to find the research. The report frames give enough students support to guide their PowerPoint, but not so much support to limit what they could do. The negatives of this didn't have to do with the writing so much as it had to do with internet and research. Despite year-long lessons on how to find information on the internet, I still have groups trying to Google entire sentences, and that doesn't help them because they wind up in places they shouldn't be, and they wind up with way too much information on things that aren't necessarily related to the topic. Things I would change, I might change some of the wording on the report frames to be a little more specific, and I'm going to put in a Google Help box for the kids underneath that says exactly what they should Google to get them to the right place. And for strugglers, I'm probably going to put in a try this website and I'll probably do it as a Google Doc rather than as a PowerPoint so the kids can just click and link. Well, that's all I have this week. Thanks. Have a great day.